Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. I'm Jibran. I'm an editorial fellow at JIPO, and I'm a medical oncologist in early phase research at the National Cancer Institute. Today, I have the privilege of interviewing Dr. Razelle Kurzrock and Dr. David Hong. Dr. Kurzrock is a professor of medicine and associate director of clinical research at the Medical Center of Wisconsin Cancer Center. She's also the endowed chair of precision oncology at the Linda T. and John A. Mellows Cancer Center and Genomic Sciences in Precision Medicine. She's also the chief medical officer at WIN Consortium. And Dr. Hong is the deputy chair at the Department of Investigational Cancer Therapeutics at the University of Texas MD Anderson Cancer Center in Houston, Texas. Dr. Kurzrock, Dr. Hong, thank you for joining us today.
Our pleasure.
Great seeing you guys.
Thank you. Dr. Kurzrock and Dr. Hong recently published an article in JIPO, which was titled, How to Build a Successful Phase 1 Clinical Trials Unit, Lessons Based on the MD Anderson Cancer Center Experience. Before I proceed, I think this article really resonates with me deeply because I'm a former trainee at the program established by Dr. Kurzrock. So I would like to learn how this vision of building a phase 1 unit came about.
Yeah, so thanks for asking, and I think I'll start. And I think a lot of the things about building, people are very excited about phase 1 units now, but I think a lot of the principles are not necessarily, they're a bit counterintuitive, and I don't think people necessarily follow them. But I just want to give some background. I was at MD Anderson. I did my fellowship there. I grew through the ranks. And in 2004, Ki Hong, who was the head of medicine, wanted a phase 1 unit. And he really was visionary. Now everybody wants a phase 1 unit. But at that time, phase 1 was actually not very popular. In fact, the argument was if the phase 1 trials are even therapeutic. Because people believed that they were toxicity trials. And Ki Hong had the vision that we really needed a phase 1 unit and that the future was in phase 1, but that was not intuitive at that time. And so he charged me with beginning and founding the unit. And Dr. David Hong was actually my first recruit.
Employee number 3, because there was Dr. Camacho there before me, but
okay, that's true. But so Dr. David Hong was my second recruit. So the unit grew very quickly, actually. And within 5 years, we were probably the largest and I believe the best in the world. And we grew from nothing to putting about 1,300 patients on clinical trials per year, therapeutic trials, within about 5 years. And I think what we can speak to, and David and I, about what made the unit so successful. And I think David especially, I left, it's over 10 years ago now that I left, but David can also speak to what has maintained the unit's success. What are those principles? But I'll just start with a couple of principles that I think, or a few that I think that are really important for people who want to build a unit. And the first one that I want to emphasize is to always do what's best for the patient. And I think that gets lost. People think about what's best for the staff, the administration, the physicians, what's best for finances. And I think the core principle, whenever you're making a decision, has to be what's best for the patient. And if you follow that core principle, most other things will follow in a positive sense. But at least that was kind of our guiding star. So I'm going to pause there, and I have other things to share, but I'm wondering if David wants to comment.
I I totally agree with Ray that that is one of the key guiding principles, and we've tried to continue many of the implementation of Dr. Kurzrock's initial founding principles. And I think to a large extent, we've continued to grow because of trying to stick with those principles. I'll tell you though, Jibran, I think one of the things though, and looking back, this was the kind of the working group was initially created in 2004, and then it became a department, right, in 2009 or
Seven.
like what,
I
seven,
think,
yeah, seven.
yeah.
And I will tell you, I have to give credit to Dr. Kurzrock because she's right that at that time, the idea of creating a phase one, there were very few phase one units, maybe one in CTRC in San Antonio, but the idea of creating a dedicated phase one solid tumor unit was really kind of against the grain. And the reason I share this with you because Dr. Kurzrock had recruited me, but I had other mentors. I'm not going to go into who they were per se, but they all told me that I should not do this. They all told me that it was a mistake because in the world of oncology, you had to have a tumor type. And Ray had told me, no, this is not going to be a tumor specific department. It's going to be, we're going to see all different tumor types and we're going to see all different molecules. And even, I want to tell you, one of my other mentors at that time had told me, don't do it. You're never going to have an academic career. And I created one many years ago and it imploded. And, and, I was like, wow, okay, I don't know if I should take this job, but I'll tell you what happened. So I don't know if you remember this, Ray, but you remember there was that corner shop and there was some chairs. You'd always like have an afternoon ice cream or something. And I was coming back from one of my continuity clinics and you saw me and you had offered me a job after I came back from the NCI. And you said, David, come over here. Have you decided whether or not you're going to take my offer? And I was honest with you. I said to you, uh, you know, everybody's telling me do not take this job because the world of oncology is determined by tumor types. And you said to me in 2004, which was visionary, you said to me, David, the world of oncology is not going to be defined by tumor types in the future. It's going to be defined by molecular phenotypes. And this department is going to lead that. And I was like, wow. I was inspired. I was inspired after that conversation. And I remember telling my at that time girlfriend, who's now my wife, Jennifer, that you know what? I know it's a risk, but this is inspiring. I'm gonna take this risk. And since then, now there's I think 8 or 9 tumor agnostic approvals.
It's actually 10 now.
10 now, right? We've led, I think, 6 of them in this department. I've been involved in at least 2 of them personally, the PIs of those studies. It's amazing, and Dr. Kurzrock's vision was correct. And I think that's one of the ways that phase one trials have changed now is that it has really been the signal that leads to eventually these molecular approvals. So I think that's something I want to give credit to Dr. Kurzrock for seeing that vision.
Yeah, so I actually remember these conversations, and I remember you being told, you told me people said you're not going to have a career. And the interesting thing is we're now in 2025, and the fellows still tell me the same thing.
Yeah.
20 years later. And it's like amazing because it's 20 years later. So that brings up the second point, and that's that you have to use the best science. And the best science, even in 2004, and certainly in the last 20 years, is to understand the molecular underpinnings of cancer. There, at this point, I don't think that there can be any question about that, but it has been a difficult transition. And you may not remember this, but we actually put in the first IRB for a tumor agnostic study. It was for temsirolimus in PI3 kinase mutant. So that never got, that did get IRB approved. It never went to a tumor agnostic trial, but the IRB took, I think, about 2 years to approve it because they thought we were kind of out of our minds. I'd like to bring up something else that I think is really important for anybody building a phase one, a couple of other things actually, but one of them that really made this work was the unwavering support from leadership. And Ki Hong was really an unusual person. And it's only in retrospect, having worked in other places now, that I realize how some of the interactions were key to making this happen and also very unusual. So Ki, when he said, you're going to lead this, he said, so this is my mission for you. I want the best phase one in the world. He was a pretty simple person. I want the best phase one. We had nothing. We didn't have a person even, but that was his mission. So we started to build. It turned out that I kind of enjoy building and I was reasonably good at it. But after a year or two, I realized that we were spending a lot of money that we didn't have yet. I actually thought the money would come in, but I didn't know if it would. And I'd always been fiscally very responsible. And I never had spent money that I didn't have. And we were probably a couple of $1 million potentially in debt. So I went to Ki and I told him that I was concerned because I thought the money would come in, but I didn't know for sure. And Ki said in his kind of stern way, what did I tell you I want? And I said, you tell me you want the best phase one in the world. And he says, are you building me the best phase one in the world? And I said, yes. And he said, I'll cover you, don't worry. And I walked out of the room and that gave me the freedom to build. Now, what's unusual about this in retrospect is I didn't say, can you send me an email about that? Can you kind of put that in writing? There wasn't anybody else in the room. And yet I trusted Ki 100%. I didn't even have a question that he would be good for his word. Now, I will tell you, I've had a couple of jobs since then, and I've worked with good people, but I would ask those other people to put things in writing. And only in retrospect do I realize that that kind of leadership, that I absolutely trusted him, his word was good, was really a key that allowed us to build.
Right. So yeah, certainly, the start of this article, it puts primary emphasis on patience and leadership. I agree that these are crucial elements. Just reading the experience that you have, it's very important for everyone to understand that leadership and patience are the most important factors. Now, also very importantly, you described in the article about this regulatory mud or factors limiting the accrual into the protocol, like the number of committees and decision steps and all that. So how important do you think these factors are in overcoming delays in opening of a clinical trial and running a clinical trial?
So I think that's a very important question. And one of the things that really hampers a lot of phase one organizations, especially in academic centers, is there has to be speed, quality without speed is not quality. And in order for there to be speed, it's really hard to get rid of bureaucratic committees. They're put in place and it's not easy to get rid of them. But I think one of the things that we instituted that was critically important in the phase one, and I would really like David to comment on this, is the FDA has determined that the physician leads the protocols and are responsible for the protocols. And yet, in most organizations that I see, the physicians do not have authority over, they're responsible for the protocols, but they don't have authority over the teams. And I strongly believe that responsibility and authority have to be aligned. And so we formed, each physician had their own team, and they had the authority over that team and the responsibility in alignment with what the FDA has decreed. And as the department chair, I had both the responsibility and the authority over everything that happened in the department. And that meant that we could forge ahead. We were not at the mercy of other institutional committees. Of course, we had to work within the framework of the institution, but we had authority to change things. We had authority to hire. We had authority over the finances. And not only did I have authority, but I delegated to each team. David, even from the time he got there, had his own team, and each of the faculty had their own team. And I think, to me, that is a critical component that I do not see in most organizations. So, David, I don't know if you want to comment about that.
Absolutely. So I think that has been one of the key to the success of ICT here. And we kept that model even after Dr. Kurzrock left, because we recognized that authority and also responsibility really drove each individual faculty to be cognizant of timelines, cognizant of enrollment, cognizant of staffing to ensure the staffing was doing their job, et cetera, et cetera. And so that has really, I think, allowed for the growth of our department, but also the timeliness of it. One other aspect that we did, I don't remember if Ray, if you I think we had something at the beginnings of this when you were here, but we created a very formalized what's called timeline initiative in our department, where we actually, even have a website where I can track exactly what stage each of the protocols are in through the process. You remember this when you were here, Jibran. And so we're able to keep metrics and review those metrics at the end of the year and keep accountable to the whole department, but each individual team as to how quickly they can try to activate these protocols. And as Ray said, that we still have to work within the context of the institution and their things, but that we realized that a lot of it was just our needing to push from our end, our needing to also reach out to the sponsors and say, hey, your CRO is still has this contract for another week, 2 weeks. We need to get this up and running as quickly as we can. All of this has helped us have probably the fastest activation times in the institution. It's not as fast, unfortunately, as some of the more private practice phase one units, and they don't have to deal with the same level of bureaucracy that we do, but it is competitive. I think the institution, particularly under the leadership of Jen Litton and others here, are recognizing that timelines are essential for all clinical trials, not just phase ones. And so there is, a push to really try to streamline the process, even in a big bureaucratic institution like MD Anderson.
So I think those comments are wonderful and totally agree with everything. I'm going to need to sign off actually because I'm chairing my next meeting. Jibran, David, it's been wonderful connecting with you. And I think MD Anderson phase 1 still stands as one of the best, if not the best phase 1 in the world. And it's good to know that a lot of what was created remains durable and that you've been able to build on that. It's very gratifying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And thank you for
Take
taking
care.
the time. So this was my brief discussion with Dr. Kurzrock and Dr. Hong, both leaders and visionaries in early phase clinical trials. I think this interview and publication offers learning for institutions with an existing phase 1 unit, as well as those in the process of developing one. I would like to encourage everyone to explore the published article online and on the JIPO website. Thank you.